Dreaming of a better sleep? Tossing and turning is not your destiny. And Ollie is here to help. Ollie invites you to sink into sweet, sweet slumber to improve your mental and physical health and overall wellness. More than just melatonin, Ollie's ingredients help you unwind your mind for a delightfully dreamy drift off. Sleep is on the way at Ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
The scholarly consensus is that there was a story about a dude named Elkanah who killed this giant named Goliath, and suddenly there's a 5-finger discount going on by whoever is responsible for the David history. And this just makes perfect sense of how his tradition developed over time. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And you are listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, where we increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion and combat the spread of misinformation about the same. How are things, Dan?
Things are good, man. I am looking. Today's show is a heavy hitter. It's a big one. I'm looking forward to it. I think maybe we'll be combating some misinformation, or maybe we'll just be muddy in the waters and confusing everybody about everything.
You know what? Sometimes that's what you got to do to advance the football.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So today for our first segment, we've got a Bible versus Bible
dun, dun, dun.
Contradiction watch, Bible style, and then at the end of the show, we are going to be taking on a one of the questions of our time, a big deal question. I will make sure that I provide a trigger warning that we will be discussing some things that might be difficult for people who have been beat up a little bit based on their sexual identity. We're going to be asking and or answering the question, what is a woman? So biblically speaking, what? Yeah, because here's, we'll get to it. But first, Bible versus Bible.
We're going to introduce our teams. We actually have one side of this is 2 Samuel 21, Missouri State. The other side is 1 Chronicles chapter 20 from Balsohard University. And we have two different tellings of more or less the same story, but they are going to present a different picture, and that picture wildly conflicts with one of the most famous stories from all of the Bible, namely David and Goliath.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't start with 1 Samuel because that's sort of our base point, the idea, the story that we're all familiar with is the story from 1 Samuel 17, I think it is.
It's chapter 17.
About David killing Goliath. David is a little up-and-comer in the Israelite army. Goliath is a very large, already upped and came over on the Philistine side. And you know, we all know the story. David has a little slingshot, bing, bang, boom, down goes the giant, sort of thing.
And it's an interesting story. If you read it closely, David doesn't kill Goliath with the slingshot.
Oh, that's a good point.
He kills him when he cuts his head off.
With a sword.
Yeah, the text actually says he killed him and cut his head off.
Okay.
And so, the slingshot basically incapacitates him.
Just knocks him out.
Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting little thing that generally we kind of scoot past without paying too much attention. But I bring up the other passages because they reflect a different take, and they actually conflict with each other. And one of them seems
as well as conflicting with 1 Samuel.
As well as conflicting with 1 Samuel. Well, one of them does not, because the secondary one actually tries to massage the text back towards what we see in 1 Samuel 17. And the question we're trying to answer here is basically, who killed Goliath? Now,
you mean that's not a settled question after the conversation we just had?
You would think it were settled, but we have this interesting story when we go to 2 Samuel 21, where we have a story about 4 different giants who are who are called the children of the giants, who are killed by different people, and this is kind of like this. This is lore. This is giant lore, and so this one giant showed up, and this guy killed him, and then this other giant showed up, and this other guy killed him, and so in 2 Samuel 21 verse 19, I'll go ahead and read it from the NRSV UE. Then there was another battle with the Philistines in a place called Gob. And Elhanan, son of Jare-Oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And the interesting thing here is this notion that Goliath was a Gittite and the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam is word for word how Goliath is described in 1 Samuel 17.
Right.
So when we're talking about Goliaths out there, this is the one who had the spear,
right,
whose shaft was like a weaver's beam.
There are not that many Goliaths with enormous shafts, and don't
spear shafts.
Don't take
just
that dirty.
To be clear.
Don't.
Yeah.
Let's get your mind out of the Philistine gutter, please.
And so it seems like the killing of Goliath is being attributed to some dude named Elhanan.
Right.
And then we look at 1 Chronicles 20, verse 5, and we have a slightly different telling of the same story. It says, again, there was war with the Philistines, and Elhanan, son of Jair, killed Lachmi, the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. So we have 2 Samuel 21 that seems to be telling a story that is a little contradictory to what's going on in 1 Samuel 17. And then we have 1 Chronicles 20, which seems to be going back in the direction by identifying this individual, this giant that was killed, as Goliath's little brother.
Right.
And this actually contributes to a bit of eisegesis, a bit of reading into the scriptural text that I have always found fascinating. I have seen a number of videos, and people have preached sermons on this, where they say, why did David pick up 5 stones from the creek when he only needed 1? It was the very first one that killed Goliath. And they say, it was in case his 4 brothers came after him. And then they go into this story about how Goliath had these 4 giant brothers, and David was concerned that they might come after him too once they saw that he had killed their big bro. And so what that story does is it looks at 2 Samuel 21, which talks about these 4 different giants that got killed.
Right.
And 1 Chronicles 20 says one of them is Goliath's brother. And so they think, well, all 4 of them must have been Goliath's brothers.
Yeah.
And so that's why. And so people have preached whole sermons.
I mean, it's
on
plausible. You could that, or possible at least.
Yeah. I would say it's about the same as Russell's teapot.
I think it's better than Russell's teapot. I think they've got Russell beat. Bertrand Russell went a little too far.
Okay, we're not that far out in the stratosphere then.
Yeah.
But there's there's something interesting that bubbles to the surface when you look into the Hebrew of the difference between 2 Samuel 21 and 1 Chronicles 20. Because 2 Samuel 21 called Elhanan son of Jare-Oregim the Bethlehemite. And Bethlehemite would be Beit Lachmi. And when we look at 1 Chronicles 20, Elhanan was the son of Jair who killed Lachmi,
right,
the brother of Goliath. And basically, the Hebrew has some kind of fuzzy edges that kind of overlap with each other, where if you just tweak a letter here and a letter there, you can get from one to the other. And so some people have said, well, this is textual corruption. Somebody mistook one letter for another. And then the next scribe down the road was like, well, this must be some dude named Lachmi. And other people say it was intentional. But the direction of change, I would argue, indicates that the 1 Chronicles reading is the secondary one, is the later one, is the corrupted one. And that is the one that identifies Lachmi as the one who was killed as the brother of Goliath. And there are a few reasons for this. One is that Lachmi would be a name that means my bread, which is not a naming convention that we know from this time or place. Nobody called their kids my bread. Additionally, it would be a Semitic name, not a Philistine name, because the Philistines were not a Semitic people when they first arrived. It was not until the centuries after that they began to kind of merge with the Semitic people. So Goliath is a Philistine name. The notion that he would have a brother with a Semitic name that meant my bread is pushing it a little bit. The other issue is that the word brother is probably a corruption of the direct object marker. So when you do something to a direct object, in Hebrew, you don't always have to, but you can indicate what the direct object is with this two-letter word, et, aleph tav. And this just indicates that's who this happened to. And in English, we use word order. In like German, you use cases. The accusative case is the object, and so forth. And et could be confused for ach, which would mean brother, but only in the Aramaic square script. And the Hebrew Bible would not begin to be written down in the Aramaic square script until the post-exilic period. And between 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles, 1 Chronicles is the later text, the one that would have been written in the post-exilic period, which would have been recorded in the Aramaic square script. That's the one where we would expect to see a confusion like this happen, or it may be an intentional change. And so what it seems happened is that 2 Samuel 21 seems to preserve an alternative story, at least a brief mention of an alternative story regarding the killing of Goliath. And then 1 Chronicles 20, which is being copied down much later, seems to recognize there's a problem here, and so kind of massages the text a little bit to distance or to reconcile the problem and say, no. Elchanan didn't kill Goliath. Elchanan killed this dude named Lachmi, who was the brother of Goliath. And so we have an attempt to try to make the contradiction go away.
Okay, so when I was looking at this in preparation for the show, I knew that was going to be one of the possible explanations. That one of the possible explanations is what you just laid out.
Yeah.
So I went and I also read an explanation from an apologetic source. And I got to be honest, it also seems totally reasonable to me. It's just in the other direction. It seems totally reasonable to me that Chronicles and 1 Samuel are in harmony, and that it was a mistake of the writer or a translator or a scribe of 2 Samuel that got the brother thing wrong, or that sort of mixed that up. So I just wanted to blow your mind by saying, like, the apologists. So going into this, I didn't know any of these, the linguistic things that I didn't know how much the Bethlehem thing lines up with the brother thing or whatever. But just on its face, it seems reasonable to say that if 2 Samuel is the place where it got it just wrong, and it's just a couple of verses, it's not repeated over and over again.
Right.
That would make total sense to me.
There are, in addition to the text critical issues, that I would suggest throw the weight of support to 2 Samuel 21 being original. We also have a text critical principle known as lectio difficilior, which I think I have mentioned before on the show. The more difficult reading. And this is not a hard and fast rule, but it is a trend.
Right.
Normally, when a text changes, it changes from a more problematic reading to a less problematic reading.
Right. Somebody's fixing something.
Right. Things tend to get fixed more than they tend to get broken.
Right.
When the text is being transmitted. Now, you can have text being broken, but we need to see evidence that that can account for why this would happen incidentally.
Right.
And there is actually a case to make that there is some textual corruption in both of these verses, because we have this Jare Oragim is supposed to be the name of Elhanan's dad in 2 Samuel 21, but that's not really a name. And Oragim is occurs again later on at the very end of the verse, because that's the word for beam in the weaver's beam. So like neither has a good case to make for being textually pure.
Right.
However, and you could make the argument that the confusion went in the direction of changing Lochmi, the brother of Goliath, to the Bethlehemite killed Goliath. But I would say it's probably, I would say the evidence is 80-20 in favor of saying 2 Samuel 21 preceded 1 Chronicles 20, and that 1 Chronicles 20 is the corruption. And this would make sense. There are a lot of scholars who have written about this. The development of the David tradition has several layers, and scholars have talked about how David seems to be initially just a mercenary. He's just a merc going around trying to scrape out a living, where, he has to feign being insane in front of the Philistine king so he can escape with his life. And he's got his little band of merry men going around and, robbing people and killing people and stuff. And he gets propped up in these stories as, this like legendary, miraculous guy who just ascended to the throne because of how cool he was. And taking over other people's accomplishments is a classic move for people who are later writing hagiography about these people.
Sure.
You get your guy to go tell your stories, and they're going to go and steal other people's stories. And so the scholarly consensus is that there was a story about a dude named Elchanan who killed this giant named Goliath, and suddenly there's a 5-finger discount going on by whoever is responsible for the David history. And this just makes perfect sense of how his tradition developed over time.
Do we think that 1 Samuel was written after 2 Samuel?
No, they're basically part of the same text. However, there are many layers to the whole thing, and some of those layers are earlier and some of those are later. They're drawing from a variety of traditions.
So somebody could have just been adding some fun stuff to 1 Samuel, and then forgot to tell his buddy, "Hey, by the way, delete that out of your version on the 2 Samuel part. I got this over here now.
Yeah,
we're putting this for David."
Or the whole David tradition could have been developed by one team, and then later on down the road, the other people are like, "Hey, we got to put all this other history on here. Okay, let's just slap it on there." And there wasn't somebody going through at the very end to make sure all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed.
There wasn't a continuity person.
Right. There was no style committee that went through. However, at the same time, maybe there was, and they could have easily looked at this and been like, we can deal with that. That's not catastrophic.
Or we'll just kick the can to whoever's going to write Chronicles.
We'll just
somebody in Chronicle. Will you fix this later? Fix it in post in Chronicles.
Yeah, I think we might be surprised how frequently a lot of these authors and editors were just like, we elect to punt. And
the more I dig into this book, the more I wouldn't be surprised about how often that happened.
Yeah, they're like, we're just trying to clear tickets, man. We're just trying to clear tickets and get it off my desk.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
So,
that's a fun story. Elhanan, David, whoever it was, whether Goliath versus his brother, bread. What was
my bread?
My bread. All right. Well, that's great. I like it. Much more difficult topic coming up. Everybody strap in, put on your seatbelts, and let's move on to taking issue.
Taking issue.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage all the way to the "we just hit 1 million orders" stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
When Johann Rall received the letter on Christmas Day 1776, he put it away to read later. Maybe he thought it was a season's greeting and wanted to save it for the fireside. But what it actually was a warning, delivered to the Hessian colonel, letting him know that General George Washington was crossing the Delaware and would soon attack his forces. The next day, when Rall lost the Battle of Trenton and died from 2 colonial Boxing Day musket balls, the letter was found, unopened, in his vest pocket. As someone with 15,000 unread emails in his inbox, I feel like there's a lesson there. Oh well, this is The Constant, a history of getting things wrong. I'm Mark Chrysler. Every episode, we look at the bad ideas, mistakes, and accidents that misshaped our world. Find us at constantpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
So, taking issue. The issue we're going to take today, or tackle, is one that is tricky. A real dingbat of a guy named Matt Walsh made a whole movie called What is a Woman?
Yeah.
Where he thought he had the best gotcha in the world by asking a bunch of people what that is. Dan, you're our linguist. What's the definition of a woman?
Gosh. Yeah, so we've got a show on why I don't like definitions, don't we? Yeah. Somewhere in the back there. Yeah, this is like a gotcha that is about at the same rhetorical level as pronouns in bio opinion rejected.
That's right.
Yeah, is a define woman, and it's annoying for me because it's like, I don't define anything. Like, I am dogmatic about avoiding definitions. So this isn't the gotcha you think it is. Right. But yeah, normally the traditional definition, and I was making a video about this earlier today just because I'm in a little spat right now with somebody about definitions. But there is no the dictionary. There is no the definition. Yeah. There are definitions, and none of them has any authority over anyone else. The ministry of what words mean doesn't exist, and they did not crown any definition, the king definition of what is a woman, because that would be dumb.
Technically in French, the ministry of what words mean does exist, I think.
but it doesn't actually have any real authority beyond, because people can use words to mean whatever they want. It's not like the ministry falls out of the sky if you use a word a way that they don't approve of, and they beat you up or something.
The black helicopters come.
Yeah, or like the words get stuck in your throat and you're like, like Jim Carrey in Liar, Liar. It's
That's
like
right.
The ministry has not authorized me to say this word to mean what I want it to mean.
Right.
But yeah, if you look in a dictionary, many of them will have something like adult female human. And one of the problems that with this is that many people today and for a long, long time have treated the word woman as a member of a gender rather than a sex. And we're going to look at an article from...
You said two words that a lot of people think mean the same thing.
Yeah. There's this place called Got Questions. Your questions, biblical answers. Yeah. And they have an article, question, what is the definition of a woman in the Bible? And so they're going to also use sex and gender as synonyms. Yeah. But many people in the world today, in English and in other languages, acknowledge that these are two different things.
And maybe more than two. Even though they're two different words, it is. Can we first acknowledge that, like, these are conceptual categories, to use a phrase that you like to use in your TikToks. Anyone who follows you on any of your things knows the phrase conceptual categories. But even like biologists don't all agree on how these things work, and linguists don't all agree. Like, you can't. The reason I think that you, Dan, don't like definitions is because language isn't the precise thing we wish it was.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And so even the words sex and gender mean different things in different contexts and different like used by different people. So I think we need to acknowledge that, like, it's not an easy, even if you're talking to a biologist or whatever, these are not easy things to nail down.
Yeah, it's very messy, and far too many people think that it's their prerogative to just assert that their understanding like reifies reality.
Yeah.
Or something like that. When it's like, no, the best you can do is say more people agree with my definition than with your definition.
Right.
And that's the extent of it.
Right.
Wow, more people agree. Great.
That
doesn't mean anything. And so I think, right off the bat, we need to acknowledge that this is messy and it differs from time to time, from place to place, from person to person.
Yeah.
It is something that I used in my dissertation a lot that I like. I think it's a great phrase, but a lot of people are like, that's way too confusing. It's situationally emergent. In other words, it's not there until the situation calls for it, and it shows up in whatever form it needs to show up to respond to the needs and exigencies of the given situation. But what I thought we could do here, because neither of us are biologists,
nope. Or sociologists or psychologists or any of that sort of thing.
And we could point to the fact that there is no definition of sex that also creates a hard, fast binary that works in absolutely all examples.
No,
there are exceptions to everything.
Not even close. I mean, if you get biological, you don't get a binary. You get a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, you get. I think a spectrum is how I would describe it. You have majorities on these ends, but then you also have a lot of integration and overlap and stuff in the center. So
stuff that's missing, stuff that's there twice. You never can tell. It's
one from one side, one from the other.
It's a smorgasbord. It's a free for all. You can't. It's not just a binary, as anyone who's looked at it even a little bit can tell you. But that's not our question. I think what you're getting to is that our question is, what the heck does the Bible have to say about it?
Yeah, and I thought the way we could do this is we could just go paragraph by paragraph. What?
Oh wow. Okay.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
Sure.
10 little paragraphs. They're like 2 to 4 sentences each. We can just skip over the references, but just read. Do you want to read the first paragraph and then we'll commentate? Okay.
Here we got. We got. By the way, this is the question posed in this article: is what is the definition of a woman in the Bible? And I love that they have answer as they have the answer. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can consider this definitive, I assume.
Yeah.
God made all of humanity, both men and women, in his image. And then there's a quote that says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That's what, Genesis 1:27?
Yes.
A woman is a person of the female gender, and a man is a person of the male gender.
And here, female and male are actually references to sex. And so the female gender would be confusing those two categories.
Right, yeah. I mean, generally speaking, in today's society, sex is a biological trait, gender is a social construct or something along those lines.
Anytime somebody says, a real man does this, says this, and wears this, that is an observation that gender is a social construct. It is all of the behaviors and the relationships and the norms and the circumstances that are around this concept of what a male person is.
Right. All right. Spiritually, we're going on here. Spiritually, men and women are equal in God's eyes. And then there's a reference to Galatians. Both reflect God's nature and character, yet the two genders each possess separate, distinct, God-designed identities.
Woo! Okay, so first thing I want to point out here is we've got some univocality being presupposed here.
Oh, of course.
And in ways that obscure some of the things that the Bible thinks and does and says that whoever wrote this does not want you to be aware of or does not want to have to deal with. For instance, we're merging Genesis 1 and 2, even though these are entirely distinct creation accounts.
Yeah.
This is something that we've been over. In fact, I think our first episode ever was about the fact that these are two distinct creation accounts. The one in Genesis 2 and 3 was earlier, and then the priestly account in Genesis 1 was like, I don't like that other one. We're going to write a better one, and we're going to replace it. And so when you try to merge the two and treat them as one and the same, you're basically having to impose an overarching kind of unifying framework, which means it's not either of them. You've created a new third thing because you've created a third thing that is going to subordinate the one thing and the other underneath it. And so this is not what any of the authors of any of these texts thought. This is what you think when you want to force them to kiss. And when you're like Darth Helmet in his room, oh, your helmet is so big. You're trying to force them together, and they don't want to be together.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with Galatians 3. I mean, men and women are equal in God's eyes. Not if you read several parts of the New Testament.
Not if you read literally any part of this book. I'm sorry. Like I've read a lot, and there are some nice portrayals of women, but for the most part, they don't even get names. And
they even had to qualify that sentence by saying spiritually,
right?
Men and women are equal in God's eyes, which is basically like saying physically, temporally, in every other way that a woman can exist, she is inferior.
I also think it's fascinating that in order to present equality between men and women, they present a text that their version of it says, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ.
Yeah.
That doesn't just
It's not saying they're equal.
That doesn't say they're equal. It says it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the binary does not exist.
It eliminates the categories.
Yeah. So that's a big problem, and partly because there is going to be a concern to preserve this complementarianism, this notion that there are different roles, and it's like, well, the roles are equal. No, one's in charge of the other.
Right,
it's like, well, they're equally important. No, one's in charge of the other.
Right.
So that is,
the way that the CEO is equal to the guy that vacuums his floors at the company.
Okay.
I'll move on to the next paragraph. It is impossible to consider the definition of a woman in the Bible without also contemplating the substance of a man, since the woman was created from the man. Yeah. Okay.
And here we're going into Genesis 2, because Genesis 1 doesn't say the woman was created from the man. Genesis 1 says God created God created humanity, male and female. He created them.
Yeah.
Boom. Created. Roasted. There is no distinction until you get to Genesis 2, and you've got the earlier problematic creation account.
Yeah.
Where it says, oh, we created the one. And then he was like, something's not right here. We're missing something. And then had to go, and it was like, I know, animals. Turns out Adam doesn't want to pair bond with any of the animals that you created, oddly enough. Yeah. So we need to try again. That's problematic.
Yeah, this paragraph goes on to sort of quote the Genesis 2 and says, Then the Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him. And it stops the quote there, which I think is amazing because it pretends like that quote is about the woman. And it's not. God tries a whole bunch of different animals before, like, no, dogs are pretty good, but nah. How about a cow? A cow, is that a good helper? No. And then
the serpent is, the way the story is crafted, the serpent was created as a part of this as well.
Yeah, exactly. So. Who does turn out to be quite a good helper in the end. But just to the woman, not to the man. And also helper who is just right for him. Yeah. Sounds complementarianism. It sounds like she is a supplement. She is just what he needs. Right.
But the
she's
word there
as a servant or something in that rendering.
But in the Hebrew, it's more like a helper equivalent to, because the word in the Hebrew means across from. The idea being, this is the counterpart, this is equivalent to, this is suitable. And so I think that actually is a point for Genesis 2 over and against the translation that they have chosen. By the way, it looks like they're going back and forth between a bunch of different translations.
Yeah, they do.
The NLT, the ESV, because they're looking for the things that are going to best serve their rhetorical goals. But the ESV is a complementarian translation. We would not have the ESV except for the fact that they were going to publish a version of the NIV in the United States in the mid-90s that was going to include gender-inclusive language. So instead of saying brothers, it was going to be like brothers and sisters or siblings or something like that. And this just sent a bunch of evangelicals through the roof. And they were like, not in my country. And they got together in Colorado Springs, and they actually talked the publishers down so that they said, okay, we won't publish this translation of the Bible in the U.S. And then they said, not good enough. We need our own translation so we can preserve our complementarian gender ideology for all the world to see. And so they created the ESV, and a lot of people read it these days because it's new, like it was published in like 2002, and they think, wow, this is a great translation. This is up to date. This is brand new. And it's actually a bunch of people who thought the NIV was too liberal. So when it comes to what is a woman according to the Bible, and they're like, let's go to the ESV, you already know there are problems.
Yeah. All right. So blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go on to the third paragraph. As God carried out the task of creation, he observed only one thing that was not good, and it was for man to be alone. That's again a reference to that same Genesis 2 thing.
And this is one of the indications that the priestly account in Genesis 1 doesn't like Genesis 2, because what does God say after every single thing that they create?
And it was good.
It was good. Because they're like, no. God doesn't create things that aren't good.
Right.
And Genesis 2 is like, and then God created the thing, and then God was like, uh-oh.
God created a man, and the man was like bored, and he was like, oh, I didn't see that coming at all.
He's got anxiety.
Let me make you an emu and see if that makes it any better. All right. So going on, the Got Questions says, thus God, quote, made a woman. The Hebrew word banah, translated as made in this verse, literally means built. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The woman is the only created being described this way, as built by God. Does it also describe her as a brick house?
Mighty, letting it all hang out.
That's right.
Yeah, and this is, you build buildings and you build towns and you build altars and stuff like that. So it's talking about the fact that God took this rib. It's actually not a rib. Sorry, excuse me. That's the traditional translation.
What? You just blew my mind. What is it?
The word there actually means side.
Oh,
and like if we had to give a gloss, it would be side. And so literally it's he took one of Adam's sides. And there is an ancient Jewish reconciliation of these two creation accounts that sees them as two subsequent creations. That first we have the creation of male and female together, and then in Genesis 2 later on we take one half of that creation to make woman. And how this has worked in this Jewish tradition is this was the original creation was of an intersex person, a person with male and female sexes.
Sure.
And then in Genesis 2, what happens is basically that individual is split in two.
Yeah, this has blown my mind because side is so different from rib.
Yeah, like, well, it's used to refer to like the sides of a ship or something like that. And I think people their imagery is like, okay, you got like beams along the side of a ship, looks kind of like ribs. Okay, it's a rib.
Yeah, but the meaning is so, like, if it could be just, I mean, could it be side? The word side is used in a lot of different ways. So I just want to dig into this. Could it mean that literally God took the left whole half of Adam and created Eve out of half of Adam as opposed to a chunk?
So that could be, yeah. And in fact, when you look later on, what does Adam say? It doesn't say this is my floating rib. This is it says this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. And so you have bone and flesh together. Yeah. Whatever was taken off from him is bone and flesh together. And so that is a rational, that is a plausible reading of what's going on here.
That is entirely different. I'm sorry, like the meaning to me in that is literally like completely different. That's my mind is actually blown. That doesn't happen too often because usually I do a lot of like work research before we do our show, but like this one, that one has me thinking. This is some Hedwig and the Angry Inch stuff. This is some good, cool. Like I really dig that imagery of slicing him in half and building two totally separate people out of it.
Well, and then we get to Genesis 2:24. Therefore, a man leaves his mother and his father and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. And that's basically saying sexual union is the return to the male and female together. So that's a reading within that comes down from ancient Judaism that is still popular with a lot of people today.
It also very much sort of takes the wind out of the sails of, well, the man's the important one and the woman's not the important one, because they're just the same thing. They're clones. They are the same thing, just differentiated in a new way.
Well, we do have some. There's going to be some pretty intense patriarchy that's going to come barreling through the walls like the Kool-Aid Man in the next chapter, where you have part of the curse is that your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. Yeah. And so one thing to point out is that, hey, this patriarchal arrangement, that's a consequence of the fall. There are a lot of Christians who like to say we have to try to overcome our fallen natures. Well, the patriarchy would be a part of the fall. So need to overcome that as well.
A lot. It is not like the patriarch. The biblically speaking, the idea of the man ruling over the woman isn't inherent to male and female. It's inherent to humanity after the fall.
Right. So they're created as, and again, if you go back to what she is a helper that is equivalent to. Mm-hmm. And it's only because of the fall, at least as we reconstruct this concept of a fall, that we have this power asymmetry. Yeah. And so if you want Genesis 2 and 3 to be a part of your understanding of the biblical idea of sex and gender, and you want to try to mush it all together in one rather than preserve the different perspectives from the different time periods, then you should pay attention to that.
Yeah, this isn't a hero and sidekick thing. This is a dynamic duo. This is a buddy comedy.
Hello everyone, Takuya here.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the hosts of History of Everything, a podcast which you can probably guess by the name is, well, I mean, it's about everything. Do you want to know why people thought potatoes were evil and would give you syphilis? Are you curious about all the stories of the terrible and stupid ways that people have kicked the bucket over the years? Do you want to hear tales about all of the different badasses of history and the lives that they had brought to life? Well, if so, then look no further. History of Everything is just the right podcast for you. It's available on Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Join us for some fun and just see how weird and wacky history can be.
Are you interested in the parts of history that remain a mystery? Do you want to learn more about the historical myths and misconceptions used to prop up false belief today? I'm Nathaniel Lloyd. In my podcast, Historical Blindness, I delve into all of these topics, sharing puzzling tales from the past and examining hoaxes, conspiracy theories, and misremembered events that provide insight into modern politics and religion. Find out what's real and what's not when it comes to famous conspiracy theories, like those surrounding notorious assassinations and secret societies. Discover the weak and deceptive underpinnings of modern political ideologies and religious beliefs. Join me as I attempt to shed some light on our historical blind spots. New episodes every 2 weeks. Find Historical Blindness on most podcast players and platforms.
All right. We'll keep going with the nonsense from Got Questions. Okay. Where was I? On the fourth paragraph, I think.
Yes.
When God constructed the woman, he supplied what was lacking and necessary for a man's fulfillment or completion. Gross. I think that's gross. That's a gross
and
sentence.
It's gonna get even worse if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So
women are there, like the man was like bored and not feeling fulfilled. So that's all she's for. Anyway, Eve was custom made to be Adam's corresponding opposite. Now that says that gives us a link to Genesis 2:21, but corresponding opposite, does that? It doesn't feel like that's.
So that's the helpmeet from the King James version. That's the equivalent helper, suitable helper, or something like that. Which up above from the New Living Translation, they share it as a helper who is just right for him.
Yeah, but I don't know about opposite. It doesn't say that. Anyway, only with God's unique gift of Eve could Adam become not merely a solo male of his species, but a legitimate model of the human race? What? What do you say? Like,
this doesn't make any sense, because
how does that follow from anything that you've presented to us in the Bible? I don't. Yeah.
And one thing here is they continue to try to eat their cake and have it too.
Yeah.
Because it's Adam is not by himself, he's nothing. But with Eve, it's not the two of them are now the model. It's still just Adam who is the model, but Adam needs this, this feature that is being added to him in order to. It's just a supplement that is being added to him.
It's the upgrade package.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It goes on to say, intrinsic in the biblical definition of a woman is this quality, this gift. Woman is man's cooperative complement or reciprocal. She is not merely a helpful assistant. I think you literally just said she is merely a helpful assistant or an add-on accessory. Literally, that's what you just said. Fitted together as woman and man, the two become symbiotic humanity created in God's image. That you just contradicted what you just said. Okay, so see, Dan, they do think that it's both of them together are the symbiotic humanity. Okay. Only as such do man and woman find their sexual counterparts and necessary procreative match. All right.
I keep thinking of the Spice Girls song "Two Become One." I don't know if you remember that.
I read several of these articles, and they all eventually, and I also watched clips. There's a real peach of a clip by Jordan Peterson where he can't talk about a woman without just all he can think about that makes a woman is to do with procreation.
Yeah.
Like it was absurd. Like his contention was essentially, if I were to boil it down, I believe that without procreation, if a woman just chooses birth control, she's a man. Like that's basically what she ends up being. It's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I think he's suggesting, like, in the eyes of society, what do you contribute to society? You're either making babies or you're making money. One of the other two, because that's all that evidently matters.
Right.
And if you're not making babies, well then you're horning in on the territory of the man, which is just such a bizarre worldview.
Yeah.
Because it's like women don't reproduce asexually. Like they carry children, but men and women both contribute to procreation.
Yeah.
And the notion that it is the unique or it is the role of one of them because they happen to be carrying the child and the other has this other responsibility is like subordinates everything to this just patriarchal idea about power and social role and social hierarchy.
Isn't it weird that this book that was written by men pretty much exclusively suddenly puts the women in a subordinate place to the men? Isn't that interesting?
Well, that's what the next paragraph is going to start off
Here
with.
we go. Wait, what am I on? Oh, okay.
Since the ancient world.
Since the ancient world was a patriarchal society, most written records of that time including scripture, present a predominantly male perspective. True.
And therefore, so do we.
Therefore, and that makes it good.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, throughout the Bible, women play significant roles in the community, home, and church. Different biblical words are used to refer to a woman in relation to these roles. The most general Hebrew term for woman is, will you just
Isha.
Isha.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also mean wife. We talked about that a little bit with
Jennifer.
Bird. Yeah, absolutely. The Greek counterpart is
Yini.
Okay. Many other Hebrew and Greek words are used to describe women at different ages and stages of life. I don't know what point they think they're making when they say that the language uses the same word for woman and wife. Do they think they've proven that the only job a woman can have is the only way a woman can be a fulfilled person is by being a wife? I don't know.
The same is true of the word for man, ish.
Yeah.
It means it is used to refer to a husband as well. But it's just like the way we sometimes use it today. Like a woman might say, "That's my old man,"
or "That's my man," or
yeah.
or a guy might say, "That's my lady over there," or "That's my woman," or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to sound a little creepy, a little ick, a little cringe, as the kids would say.
Yeah, and from Clueless, I told you about calling me woman.
Yeah. All right. The foremost role of a woman in the Bible, we're back to got questions here. The foremost role of a woman in the Bible is that of a wife. She is a companion who supports her husband, enriches his life, and brings him joy and pleasure.
So this is literally saying that the foremost role of a woman in the Bible is to supplement the life of a man.
Yeah.
And to contribute to his enjoyment of life.
Yeah. It is saying that. And I love the use of the word foremost there, considering that the next sentence starts, an equally defining role of women in the Bible is childbearer or mother.
Yeah.
I like that distinction between childbearer and mother. They are two different things.
The Bible also refers to women who are queens, women who are prophetesses, women who are generals, warriors, women who do all of these things.
Yeah.
But because they're not the most frequently mentioned roles, we're going to suppress those.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're who could possibly be interested in those things? That doesn't sound fascinating at all. All right. The ideal Old Testament woman, oh God, we're getting into the ideal Old Testament woman. This terrifies me. Resembles many women of strength and character today. She is dignified and virtuous.
I want to stop you real quick.
Yeah.
We think of virtuous as having to do with like chastity and things like that, because it's a holdover from the King James Version. But when the King James Version was translated, virtue meant strength. And like, this is why when Jesus when the woman with the issue of blood touches Jesus's robe and he says, I felt virtue go out of me. That doesn't mean that Jesus's chastity or morality suddenly vanished.
He got horny all of a sudden.
He felt power leaving him. But the word virtue gets associated with women. And so even though in the Hebrew Bible, this word chayil, which means like strong, powerful, when it's used to refer to men, they translate it differently from when it's used to refer to women. And when it's used to refer to women, it frequently gets interpreted to refer to some kind of moral character rather than what it refers to, strength and power.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that the authors of Got Questions knows that. She is dignified and virtuous, works productively not only at home, but is capable of running a profitable business. What? Supervising people with kindness and wisdom, making investments, and planning for the future, all while managing her household, building a solid family, and caring for the needy in her community. What are they talking about?
So this is from Proverbs 31. This is you're not familiar with this passage? This is so in Proverbs, this is supposed to be the king talking to his son and giving him counsel.
Okay.
And so we have this ode to a woman of strength. And this is eshet chayil. This is that word chayil that I mentioned before. But you go look in the King James Version, who can find a virtuous woman? So, but a woman of strength who can find, she is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her female slaves.
How does she have time for any of this?
Because she's got a bunch of slaves.
Okay, there is that. That's nice.
She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle, blah, blah, blah. She opens her hand to the poor, reaches out her hands to the needy. She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the city gates, taking a seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchant with sashes.
Holy cow. This woman is on fire. That is a Kardashian we're talking about.
This is a girl boss here.
Yeah, man.
Now, it does have her primarily overseeing the management of the household, but this is written probably in the Persian period, in a time when we're starting to get this idea that's closer to the Greco-Roman idea of the household, where the woman manages all the household. And this actually conflicts with other things. So when we talk about modest clothing, we talked about this a little bit, modesty. In the Hebrew Bible and even in the New Testament, it says don't braid your hair, don't put on makeup, don't wear fancy clothes. But here it's like, no, she wears fancy clothes. Her clothes are fine linen and purple and stuff like that. Yeah. That's fancy clothes.
Yeah, that's not modest dress.
No, this is an ideal from a different kind of social standard. But yeah, this is a pretty famous ode to the powerful woman. So they're trying to sound egalitarian here, even as they
Yeah, that's crazy. Like literally the woman that they just described, first of all, has no need for a man. Like I don't like she is a powerhouse. Nobody needs she doesn't need anything from anybody. And second of all, I mean, this is Taylor Swift stuff here. Second of all, like what you're not describing is a little church mouse housewife who
a trad wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Whether you like the Taylor Swift version or the WWE version, she's the man.
She's killing it. I like that. But what she isn't is like a companion who supports her husband and brings him joy and pleasure. Like that's not what that is. That is a woman. She doesn't have time to be like, go find yourself a therapist, honey. I'm busy.
She has a long jacket, and picking up slack.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it? Touring the facilities and picking up slack.
But apparently the Bible says that you can have it all, ladies. So that's good. Let's see. So the article goes on. In the early church, women ministered alongside the apostles and supported the work of the church.
I'm gonna have to correct this right here.
Okay.
So one of the things they quote there is Romans 16:6. When they talk about ministering alongside the apostles.
Yeah.
Romans 16:6 says, "Greet Mary, who has worked very hard for you." They skip over Romans 16:7, which says, "Greet Andronicus and Unia, my fellow Israelites who were in prison with me. They are prominent among the apostles."
Right. We talked
Unia
about
is
Unia.
a woman's name.
Yeah.
So this they quoted a passage that does not say women ministered alongside the apostles and skipped over the passage that says, no, women were apostles.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to acknowledge that a woman had that role.
I mean, I'm impressed that they acknowledge women ministering at all. You know, so many of these articles just went straight to whatever the one was that said women be quiet in the church or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to get there though, aren't they?
Oh, probably.
Yeah, they're going to get there.
These have all blended together in my mind. I don't know what's coming. So women have ministered alongside the apostles, supported the work of the church. No, they did the work of the church. Hosted church meetings, prophesied, mentored, and taught.
Yeah, and hosted church meetings. I mentioned that when we get into the Greco-Roman world, you have this concept of women being the managers of the house.
Right.
And within early Christianity, you had women who owned homes, and a lot of hosted church meetings doesn't tell half the story. These are women who owned their own homes who said, you can have my home to use as a church. Yeah. So it's more than just hosted church meetings. These were women who owned property. And we have and donated things to the church, and we have funerary inscriptions, and we have frescoes in catacombs and things like that make reference to women as leaders, ecclesiastical leaders within the church.
Okay, if you say so. In God's perfect design for the home, he intends, this is not going to go well. He intends for a woman to be submitted to the leadership of her husband. Now that quotes Ephesians 5:22 and 1 Peter 3:1.
Yeah, notice they're not quoting 1 Timothy.
What is
Timothy's like, shut up. Well, Timothy's the one who says that women don't permit a woman to. Actually, it's also probably the interpolation in 1 Corinthians 14, but also in Timothy we have this idea that women should learn in silence,
right?
And let her ask her husband when they get home.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, just as good, they've got the Ephesians thing that says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church."
Yeah, and maybe you've seen on social media, sometimes you'll see this picture of 3 different umbrellas on top of the other one. The big one, the smaller one, and the smallest one.
Right.
where the big one is Jesus, the middle one is a man, and then the smallest one is the woman.
Right. And the woman's umbrella protects her and the kids, and the man's umbrella protects him and them, and then Jesus's protects everybody.
Yeah.
But
and there's another metaphor that is used to try to gin up a sense of egalitarianism, which is the I don't remember what the word for it is, but it's like the fire brigade buckets. That where you're handing buckets. Across it, and so somebody has to be first, and then the others go behind. So that's a metaphor that is sometimes used to refer to that.
Yeah.
But
this goes on. It says a wife's submission and obedience are to be reciprocated by the husband's love and self-sacrifice. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
In this way.
And also Ephesians, by the way, an awful lot of scholars don't think that Paul wrote Ephesians, that this is another pseudo-Pauline epistle.
Yeah. Okay.
And Peter definitely didn't write 1 Peter.
Okay. In this way, the woman's relationship with her husband portrays the church's relationship with Jesus Christ.
In other words, men, you're Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And women,
basically, until he shows up, you get to be that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels a little uneven.
Yeah. And it reminds me of 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. There was a precinct chair in Davis County GOP who like posted on social media that our society started going downhill when I forget the exact words he said, but it was basically when women left the kitchen and started voting, and there were some people in the GOP who were like, please don't say that, and then there were other people who were like, damn straight, and it was a pretty revealing time as there were other very revealing things going on with the election of a serial sexual predator. So it was bad.
I feel like this article does what so many of these articles do, which is tries so hard, as you say, to have its cake and eat it, where it's like women are equal, but the man's in charge. It's egalitarian, but it's not. It's this, but it's that. Like, you have to submit, but you have to be strong. You have to be, like, again, putting no onus on men to do anything but like love her, whereas she has to be everything to everyone, and she's just there as an accessory to help out the important person who's the man.
And in the last paragraph, this one sentence says it all, I think. God created the woman to complement and complete the man, and thereby become a God-glorifying representation of his nature and character. In other words, you're being glommed onto the man to make sure that he is all that he can be. Yeah.
I guess the point, like one of the sort of takeaways of all of this is that even if you're a Bible-believing person, we don't have to, there's a million ways that society has improved on the Bible. What the Bible has to say about Nintendos is not useful in a modern society.
Or illness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the cause of illness, guess what? Despite what some Christians still think, it's not demons. We learned that. We figured that part out. It's okay for us to not look to 2,000-year-old, 4,000-year-old texts to define how we want to do our gender relations and how we want to look at sex and gender in a modern context.
And I think it is so disingenuous to try to, in one of these paragraphs, since the ancient world was a patriarchal society, to try to like fob off the fact that this is just straight up patriarchalism, on the ancient world and said, "Oh yeah, we have a better idea now about how to make women subservient."
We have a better idea now, and that idea is do the same thing they did.
Yeah, and really, this is just an attempt to rationalize using the outdated ethics of the Bible as a proof text for structuring power in a way that serves their interests today.
Yeah.
If they weren't doing that, they would take a little more seriously the differences in these texts. They wouldn't presuppose the univocality of everything from Genesis 1 to Genesis 2 all the way over to Galatians 3 and imagine that it all reflected the exact same perspective, because it manifestly does not.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's that, everybody. If you would like to hear us talk a little bit more about this, and I think we'll get into some interesting stuff, as well as answer some of our patrons' questions. You can become a patron over on patreon.com/Data Over Dogma. If you sign up at the $10 a month level, you'll get every week we do the after party with lots more cool content. So sign up for that, or you can just sign up for early ad-free access. That's at just the $5 a month level. So head on over there if you want to. If you need to contact us, it's contact@dataoverdogmapod.com, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Data Over Dogma is a member of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. It is a production of Data Over Dogma Media, LLC, copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
If you like this podcast, can we recommend another one? It's called Big Picture Science. You can hear it wherever you get your podcasts, and its name tells part of the story. The big picture questions and the most interesting research in science.
Seth and I are the hosts. Seth is a scientist. I am Molly, and I'm a science journalist. And we talk to people smarter than us, and we have fun along the way. The show is called Big Picture Science, and as Seth said, you can hear it wherever you get your podcasts.